Gospel of John. John is the fourth gospel. And there are many of you that are Bible readers and you've been in Bible study, and you know that there are 27 books in the New Testament, and there are 4 gospels. And the first 3 gospels are often referred to as the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And they're called synoptic. That word means similar, because there are similarities, and much of the material in each of those gospels are repeated, and they may have some different emphasis. Those first 3 gospels tell of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and each of them have a particular perspective. But John, who is believed to be, or at least is writing in the spirit of the beloved disciple John, is the fourth gospel. And John takes a very different approach. You will notice in those first 3 gospels, they all start out kind of telling you about the genealogy or the history or the place of the birth of Jesus. John starts out very differently. He doesn't tell you about Bethlehem or about the stable or about the shepherds or about the wise men. He doesn't labor in that way. John tells you that in the beginning was the Word. There's an opportunity for a teaching or a discourse. And so today there is one of those encounters. Jesus has an encounter, or Nicodemus has an encounter with Jesus. And just as I told you last week, often to understand a text, if you see what happened prior, when you go back in the 2nd chapter, you see that Jesus had been talking. He was in Jerusalem. It was Passover. He was at the Passover festival. He was being challenged by the religious leaders saying, give us a sign. And Jesus said, I ain't giving you no sign. I ain't going to do no miracles because y'all want me to do one. He said, I'll tell you what, you see this temple? If you destroy it in 3 days, I'll raise it up. And they said, he crazy. It took us 46 years to build this temple. What is he talking about? If we destroy the temple, he'll raise it up in 3 days. Jesus was saying, they're thinking about the physical temple. And Jesus was saying the temple he was talking about was his body. It was after the resurrection that they would understand. And many of the things that Jesus said to them, they didn't understand them right then. They understood them later. And they have been a blessing. He was in darkness coming toward Jesus, who was the light of the world. He came to Jesus at night because, like many people who need to have an encounter with Jesus, often we need to get to know Jesus better, but often we worry about what other people are going to say and think. He comes to Jesus at night. He wants to go undetected. He wants to go unnoticed. He wants to slip to Jesus at night to find out more about him. But let me tell you something, church. When you get curious about God and Christ, when you get really serious about knowing God, God already is waiting on you. He already knows you. Nicodemus was still yet trying to slide in a back or a side door. He comes to Jesus not realizing that God already knows you. See, sometimes we approach God in prayer and we approach God almost like we're talking to somebody else. We get so used to wearing our facades that we forget that God knows everything about us. We can't go to God with and share. This week I was also struck by a note that I received from an individual who was sharing out of some pain, coming out of a place of having experienced some hurt and some disappointment. And as I read that note, and I'm grateful for it, as I read that note, I realized that that person that had disappointed or caused pain was me. And I had to own that even with our best of intentions, even when we're trying to live for God and love people, we all wear this flesh suit. And sometimes we hurt folk when we don't want to hurt them. And sometimes we disappoint when we don't want to disappoint. But thanks be unto God for that power of forgiveness and the power of the word that reminds us that sometimes as we have received forgiveness and grace, that we need to be agents of it. And every now and then, something has to shake and jar us and tell us, guess what? I'm carrying some baggage that I need to let go of. I'm carrying some stuff. I've been disappointed by stuff, and I'm carrying it, and I can't behold in who God wants me to be until I release and admit and confess and approach stuff that I need to deal with. So thanks be to God. I don't know whatever it is that causes you to get to a place or causes me to be confronted with the fact that I've got my faults and my failures. And to be able to be real enough with God and with others, to be vulnerable enough, to be honest enough, to trust God enough, that I've got to go and give that stuff up. I've got to go and approach and deal with it. Because when you're still holding on to hurts, you can't truly be whole. And say, Lord, I'm going to lay that. I'm going to deal with that. All right. Sometimes we can go to Jesus, and Jesus can help us, but sometimes we also got to go back to individuals. And we got to deal with that. And it's not forget anything except sometimes to just empty ourselves. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is Spirit. Thanks be to God for the power to be born from above. You must be born again, born afresh, born again. Doors of the church are open. Amen.